Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is David Bryant, Chief Operating Officer at Young Manufacturing Company. This family-owned American manufacturer has proudly operated for 150 years, offering treads, risers, and other quality millwork while focusing on sustainable forestry and innovation. Their mission is to deliver what customers want, when they want it, at a fair price, ensuring lasting value and craftsmanship. During his 2 years with Young Manufacturing, David has helped strengthen operations and drive growth, building on his extensive background in sales strategy and leadership. He also serves on the board of directors for the World Millwork Alliance, showcasing his commitment to advancing the industry. Now, before Young Manufacturing, David held multiple leadership roles in the manufacturing sector and excelled at developing market opportunities with a goal-focused approach. He previously led sales strategies in major corporations, refining operational processes and championing collaborative teams. His track record of improving efficiency and enhancing market position makes him a powerful influence at Young. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to add over $900 per employee per year in extra cash flow by implementing one of our innovative programs. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefits.com. All right, back to our guest today, the COO of Young Manufacturing, David Bryant. I appreciate you making the time to share your story today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So, David, how did you first get started in the building materials industry?
There's kind of a old adage in this industry: once sawdust gets in your blood, you can't get out of it. My father was actually a part-time home builder, so some of my earliest memories are literally being on the job site, helping my dad, build homes, and from the foundation all the way to the interior millwork. And so, in many ways, it's just been in my blood. One of my first jobs out of college was with Hunter Douglas, and we did blinds that were specifically made for doors. And so, little did I know, 30 years later, I would still be in the millwork industry and in the door industry.
So, what were some notable stops along the way before you got to Young?
Sure. So again, as I said, I started out with Hunter Douglas. Hunter Douglas is probably the largest blind company in the world. And they had fabrication facilities in Owensboro, Kentucky, which is where home was. And then I went to work for a company by the name of Trinity Glass, which is the largest decorative glass manufacturer in the world, with facilities in China, Seattle, Washington, and as well as Pennsylvania currently. And I was there for probably about 4 or 5 years, and then I went to a company, a publicly traded company by the name of Quanex, where I was VP and general manager of the door components facility in Richmond, Indiana. And from there, I was there for probably about 7, 8 years or so, and then I made a move to MJB Wood Group. We were a diversified building materials provider, both to the OEM and to the distribution level, where I became a shareholder of the company. And now I'm at Young Manufacturing as the Chief Operating Officer.
Now, before we started the live interview, we were kind of chatting a little bit, and you mentioned one stop along the way where they kind of moved you into a rather senior role at a pretty young age.
Yeah,
Which of those stops was that?
That would have been time with Quanex. So I was, I would have been 32 years of age. And one day I had 2 of my independent sales reps call me and tell me that this division of this publicly traded company that they represented was looking for a new vice president and general manager. And they not only told me about the role, they actually made a recommendation to the hiring manager, a fellow by the name of Jim Gulliford, that I might be someone that they needed to talk to. And so sure enough, that role was given to me at a very young age.
So aside from the personal recommendations, which clearly carry a lot of weight, what is it that you think they saw in you at such a young age?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know if I would have hired myself for that role at that time. Um, but I think it was the how can I say this, the degree of commitment that my independent reps were providing to the company to get me that role. Their recommendations carried a lot of weight, and I really do think that was the deciding factor. We've, over the years have done very well, not only on the sales side, but from a product development side. And those were things that I think that at the time, this division of Quanex desperately needed. And I think that Mr. Gulliford saw that and took a risk.
So sales, business development, but also product development. Can
Mm-hmm.
you think of an interesting product that you helped to bring to market along the way?
Oh, I haven't counted recently, but I think I'm up to 10 utility patents and a similar number of design patents. And I'll never forget one time I was with when I was still with Hunter Douglas. We were flying down to the production facility in Tupelo, Mississippi, and the president of the fabrication division was a fellow by the name of Dick Anderson. And when you walked into Dick's office, on this wall, when you first walked in, immediately to the left, it was just covered in patent plaques. And it was just, being, 23, 24 years old and seeing that, and how in the world you have all these patents, and how in the world did you get to this role, this company? And so I was sitting across from him in this airplane. We had a twin-engine Piper Cub that we were flying back and forth in. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Anderson, I said, can you tell me how in the world you came up with all these ideas for all these patents? And he was reading a newspaper and had the half moon bifocals, and he looked over him at me. He said, David, he said, all I can tell you is always remember, the answer is always the result of a well-defined question. And that just stuck with me. So, anytime that, we're looking for any kind of product development, it's really, you're asking yourself, what is it we're trying to accomplish with it? And you're really trying to go through all the steps, what you want this solution to be, and you really define it on the front end. And if you do a good job of that, the answer inevitably presents itself just through a product of elimination.
So 10 design patents, roughly 10 utility patents. Did you have like an engineering background, a design background, or like you were just sort of paying attention to what customers said? Like, where are the ideas?
No, I think I've always been somewhat technically minded, but being a degreed engineer, no, I'm not. Now, I've had some degreed engineers, that very talented ones, that have worked with me, so I can't take all the credit for all this. But for me, I've always been somewhat technically minded, and I don't know if it's genetic or what, but my son has been either blessed or cursed with the same thing. He was probably about 12 years old one day I was walking by his room, and he's sitting on the floor, and he had his computer literally torn apart. And I walked in there, Bo, what are you doing? I just want to see how it worked. I just rolled my eyes and walked out before I blew a gasket. And
something about the apple not falling too far from the tree.
He was able to put that thing apart, and even to this day, he has a lot of his friends come to him for help in working on their cars and whatnot. So I don't know if it's inherited or what, but that whole mechanical inclination runs in the family.
Okay, so you really grasped onto this idea of the answer is always a result of a well-defined question. And then,
well, I can't take credit. I can't take credit for that. That was something that one of my many mentors left with me.
A great lesson that was passed down to you. Now you're passing down to myself and the audience. So it's one thing to be able to define the question, but I don't know, like what is sort of is that really the starting point, or does the starting point come from you or a customer kind of identifying a problem or a need?
It can be either. It can be both, and it can be all the above. I think I may be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but when we were talking about the position at Quanex, I've kind of joked, but not really. If I had known what kind of turnaround opportunity it was, I don't know if I would have taken it. So I walked into a situation where the employee morale was very bad. The previous administration really ruled with an iron hand. The intellectual property was old. And being a publicly traded company, we had a different fiduciary responsibility than my competitors. So you're walking into a situation where you just moved your family 4.5, 5 hours away. This is potentially a golden ticket type job, and you have inherited a mess. So you had to kind of step back and okay, so how do I increase sales? How do I charge more for it? How do I change the culture? And how do I do this within a very short time period? And so, those are things that, just kind of going through my mind. And so we just really had to put a strategic mindset as far as what do you change and in which steps that you do that in and what do you prioritize. And for me, that very much that analytical approach has served me well over the course of my career.
And so it was sort of that maelstrom of problems that you walked into that was really sort of the instigator for you looking for sort of innovative product development ideas.
Product and market development. So we really pioneered the idea of the certified entry systems concept. So a lot of my competitors were making wild claims about the performance of their product, and we knew that some of these claims just weren't accurate. So we developed this concept where we were doing third-party certifications and labeling those doors. So not only was it a product, but it was also changing the way that the product was perceived and the way that product would be purchased and distributed out in the field at large.
Okay. That's interesting. Tell me more about what that means, the certified entry.
Oh, head broke up there, Anthony.
All right, we're back.
Okay.
Tell me more about the certified entry product. What does this mean? What does this even refer to? Break it down for a layperson.
Hang on there, Anthony. You went underwater. It looks like the signal's good. I don't know what's going on.
How about now? You got me now?
Okay, Anthony, I think we've got signal again.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely can hear you.
Okay. So I'm curious to better understand the certified entry product. Like what is certified entry even refer to? What is it that the competitors were sort of overselling, overstating? Like walk me through this as a layperson.
So if you think about any type of door and window, it's really measured with two criteria: how well it stands up to the strength of wind blowing against it, and how well it fights against water infiltration. Those are the two main criteria. One of them is called PG, which means performance grade, and that's the air in the water, and the other is DP, which is design pressure, which is going to be the strength. And so most modern systems will perform well against the structural, which is the wind, but the air and water is a much different test, and that's really what really separates a lot of entry systems. And so we actually went through a third-party lab to certify our doors that it would perform to a certain level. It just wasn't us just making a wild claim and putting it on a piece of paper and saying that's what it does.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's move closer to present day. How did the opportunity to join Young Manufacturing come about?
Can you run that by me again? I think it broke up again.
Just kind of getting closer to present day, how did the opportunity to join Young Manufacturing come about?
I was with a company by the name of NJB Wood Group, and we sold I was a shareholder there, and we sold our company to Coors, and I was being very careful my next opportunity, and I had a recruiter reach out to me one day expressed some interest in me perhaps interviewing for this position. And sure enough, it was 22, 25 miles away from where I grew up. And so, yeah, obviously this is an opportunity to go back home, remain in the same industry, and really continue my career back home, so to speak.
Okay, so again, for the layperson, myself included, tell me about what young manufacturing does. Like, break it down
Sure.
for us in a way that somebody
Sure.
outside the industry can understand.
Sure. So we are a 150-year-old company. It was until very recently family owned. We just transitioned into an ESOP, so we're very excited about that for our employees. But we are one of, if not the largest stair tread manufacturer in the world. We also make ancillary millwork items to accompany interior millwork made predominantly out of red oak, white oak, and poplar. We also are one of the larger exterior door frame manufacturers in the U.S., and we also make door sills here. So we're able to really combine a lot of millwork items on one truck, and we do a lot of our own transportation. We have our own fleet of trucks. So we're able to provide a overall solutions concept, systems concept going into our distributor base. And we do sell some to big box, but we only sell to big box through distribution. So our customers are really the old school mainline two-step distributors here in the United States.
What does that mean, a two-step distributor?
Sure. So if you can think about it, a two-step distributor will be somebody who buys our products and they'll either distribute them to a mom and pop lumber yard, or they will fabricate the product and then sell it to a independent lumber yard. Or they could take that and sell that into big box. So there's really three ways here in the building products industry how to get product out. One would be selling it direct to the big box through their distribution outlets. One is selling it directly to the lumber yard, who in turn would sell it directly to the builder. And the two-stepper would be someone that we sell to the distributor, who then, like as I said, will either do some minor fabrication or a distribution that will then in turn to sell it to the lumber yard, who then will go and sell it to the builder.
So in your industry, in this distribution model that you've described here, what's the advantage for Young in selling through a distributor rather than selling directly to, say, a big box retailer?
When dealing with a big box retailer provides some degree of difficulties, as far as scheduling deliveries, having to deal with the return policies. Those can be difficult, and it requires a different or an additional customer service department to be able to field and schedule. On selling to the two-step distributor, it also has the advantage for us is that we're able to get some economies of scale. So we will go and we will sell product in truckload quantities. So we're able to create larger runs of product and sell those direct to the distributor, and then in turn they will break it down and sell it to the retailer, either be the independent lumber yard, the large one-stepper, or big box.
It's incredible. You mentioned 150-year legacy. Young manufacturing's been around. Obviously, you've only been there a couple of years, but in the time that you've been there, I'm sure that you've learned a lot of the company's history. How do you think this company has not only just lasted so long, but thrived in that time period?
So, my history actually goes back a little bit to the patriarch. He passed away about 4 or 5 years ago, and I knew him. We were competitors, but he was very much a larger than life character. His children, whom the company was left to, have such a wonderful dynamic. I'm so blessed to have walked into this situation. So you hear a lot of horror stories about family-owned companies with infighting, falling apart. That absolutely does not happen here. Everybody has well-defined roles. Everybody respects each other. They respect each other's roles. But by the same token, the oldest son is very much the president of the company, and they will have spirited discussions with one another. But if the president decides that this is the direction we're going to go, they have a unified front. And so, I've seen and read a lot about the downside of family companies, but this company here is the living embodiment of what can be if the family pulls together in one direction.
Mm. So you've got this legacy company here, 150 years old. Mm. How do you, and maybe even pull specific examples of integrating and introducing fresh ideas and strategies into a company with such a storied history?
So it's kind of funny is that the sister, whenever I was interviewing with her, she said, David, you have to understand what a big deal this is to us. You were the first outsider ever allowed in.
Wow.
So, and part of the reason was that they knew that they were hidebound. And by that, I mean, they had done things in a certain way because that's how Dad and that's how Grandpa did them. So, they had full acknowledgement that there were probably better ways to do things and that they had been doing them. So they were really not just willing, but wanting this feedback. They were wanting to know, what's a better way to do this? What could we be doing better? What are we doing wrong? What are we doing right? What do we not need to change? And so they were very, very open in accepting.
So when you say you're the first outsider let in, does that mean the first outsider let into a C-suite position?
Yes. It always been very much a tight family company, and Robert led the company his way, and the children learned that way, and that's what they knew. And so, transitioning from a family-owned company to an ESOP, growth is important, and so they knew that they needed to do some things differently, and we've come out with some new products, and we are going to market in a slightly different way, and so the growth we have had over the last few years has been spectacular, and we're looking forward to building on the legacy of the past and carrying that forward.
What is one innovation that you've brought to the table that's had a positive impact on that growth curve?
So, well, a couple things really come to mind. So, as I alluded to earlier, we had our own trucking. And, the thing about trucking for us is that we're not a freight company. So, if I have a cost, let's say, of $2.90 a mile, it's actually double because I have to backhaul. And so we really try to keep it within a certain circumference of here because we're always trying to pick up lumber on backhauls to defray freight costs. And so, there are things we really analyze our trucking lanes, what was a profitable route for us, what was not a profitable route. And so we were able to swing what was a loss into a positive category. And we've also here have been blessed with a lot of natural resources in red oak and white oak and the other hardwood species. And we've had some customers over the years that have some concern about our color match not always lining up because our treads are made of 5 different staves. And so we came out just here recently with a new patent pending a cap tread that's going to be not just color matched but book matched. So it's going to allow us to have a very cost effective but yet high end book matched stair tread that we're really looking forward to.
What do you mean by book matched?
Okay, so if you can imagine a piece of wood and it's being sliced, and then you match them or put them side by side, you're going to see the grains of the wood meet on the vertical plane of the tread. So it's going to look like a mirror for those 2 treads. So it really gives it a very nice, beautiful look.
So how do you do this?
Ancient Chinese secret.
Okay, so this is
it's part of the patent pending of the manufacturing process that we have with it. There are some technical hurdles with that we've been able to overcome.
So it's not the way in which the tree is grown. It's a way in which it is processed.
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Okay. I thought maybe there were like molds that you've got the trees
No.
inside of.
And so I had a good friend that worked with, and Klaus went to, and I forget the name of the school, but there are only a handful of universities globally where you can get a degree in wood science. And Klaus went to one of these schools in Germany, and he even has a license plate on his vehicle, custom license plate that says "Wood is alive." But one of his favorite sayings is, "David, God never created a perfect tree." So whenever you're dealing with wood and some other products, natural products, the variation is part of the beauty. It's part of the art of it.
Right. Oh, that's fascinating. I really want to understand how this process works, and I'm sure all your competitors do too. That's really cool that you guys have figured out something to pull that off. Let's I don't know, maybe tell me more about your sustainable forestry practices, Dave.
Yeah. So going back into the early 1900s, Kentucky was largely clear cut. And so there's a reason why a lot of people older than I am really don't remember forests having turkeys and deer and other wild species. And the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife has done a wonderful job of reintroducing these species and repopulating the state. For us, we do not partner with anybody that engages in clear cutting. We'll only
What
harvest.
is clear cutting?
So clear cutting basically is, let's say you have a tract of land that's 50, 100 acres, and you're literally just going through and cutting everything and leaving nothing behind.
Okay.
So we only harvest or deal with loggers and sawmills that harvest mature trees only, and that do not engage in clear cutting. We do have some of our own forestry that we do manage, but generally speaking, we're buying lumber from about 250-mile radius here of Beaver Dam, Kentucky. And one of the neat things is that we put in the mid-90s a very high-tech lumber grading and sorting facility. And so this in the 90s, this was state of the art, and it's still state of the art today. It was just an incredible achievement by the family at that period of time. But what we end up doing is that we're able to actually track the lumber that we harvest back to not only the logger, but to the parcel of land that tree was cut from. So we are not FSC certified, but we could be, because we do have records literally going back to the parcel of land that is being cut from. So we really take it being very, very seriously. We try to maximize yield, not only from a cost standpoint, but also from a utilization standpoint. We're really trying to minimize the impact that we have on the forestry because the forestry is our livelihood here. So we have to take care of the forests. We have to take care of the people that not only log, but also work the sawmills for us. So we pay our sawmills within 24 hours after grading the lumber. So we're really trying to take care of our people and our natural resource all the way back to the source.
So you've got independent loggers that are, cutting the trees down. You only buy from certain ones that are doing sustainable practices, like, just cutting down the mature trees. That tree goes to a sawmill to get processed to some level. And what is it that gets delivered to you guys, and what state is it at that point?
It'll get delivered to us in a green lumber state, so we will buy it by thickness. And when it comes here, it'll get graded. We have our own dry kilns where we will kiln dry it and process it. So in that way, outside of we could be, but we're pretty well integrated all the way again back to the forest. But when it goes to the the lumber handling facility, it'll then be put on sticks. It'll be on that yard for anywhere between 3 and 4 months. before it's actually processed into a stair tread or a door jamb at that point.
Mm. I want to ask about two of your innovations there, Armalast and Retrofit. What are these?
So the last one is actually a retro tread. So we actually have we have a patented product where a homeowner or anyone who's in the trade can take an existing staircase that may have carpet on it. You can pull off that carpet and you can turn it into a hardwood staircase. Very easy for anybody to do. It's really a weekend type job, even for the simplest do-it-yourselfer. Armalast is a rot-free jamb that we developed. It actually started in its original form as Prime Plus, which had been in the field for probably about 15 years before I got here, but it wasn't fully warranted. So there were some changes that we made to the construction of the product, some changes we made to the primer and the way that we processed it. So we're able to offer a lifetime warranty with that product.
So that retro tread product, is this kind of like a polyurethane coating that somebody would put down on the hardwood?
No. So you'll remove the carpet, you'll remove all the padding, but it is a 4/4 hardwood that's glued together. It's solid oak that will have the scotia molding already applied to it. So you can remove your carpet, and with the riser and with the tread, you can glue those in place, and so you're converting that old carpeted staircase into a hardwood staircase.
Carpet comes off. This product goes on top of it, on top of the sort of the stair frame that's underneath that carpet.
Yes.
It gives it that finished, polished look.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You've got a background in marketing and sales. Now you steer operations. In what ways has that marketing mindset kind of influenced your leadership decisions there?
So that's a hard question to ask because I have always in my career worked for very flat organizations. So even though that my title may have been something related to sales and marketing, I had always had some degree of operational responsibility. Even dating back to the time with Trinity Glass, I eventually became the de facto general manager of that facility. During my time with Quanex, again, I was responsible for the total P&L of that facility. So, every organization being so flat, you have no choice but to have multiple roles and to really have a degree of competence in all those roles. So, I think that for me personally, having that well-rounded background and always having my fingers in, every part of the operation has personally benefited me in my career development.
You're a board member of the World Millwork Alliance, which sounds like it's probably a little bit time consuming, especially considering how busy your real job must keep you. What's the motivation to be a part of that?
So, outside of being a husband and father is one of the greatest honors that could have ever been bestowed on somebody. And it's because it was my peers, both customers and competitors, that voted to put me on the board after my nomination was put forward. So it really, in many ways, is kind of a validation of everything that you've done. And so, when I was first nominated, I was honored. And then when, I was notified that I was approved to be on the board, I mean, it was a huge honor, and I'm happy to do anything that they ask of me.
And so what is your involvement like?
So, we meet several times a year. There are different committees. The World Millwork Alliance really pulls together the suppliers, the customers, from an overall knowledge sharing standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, and from a codes standpoint. And we have numerous committees we are trying to promote our industry and to encourage other people who are either suppliers or pre-hangers to join the industry. And it's really something that there's just a tremendous amount of knowledge that is shared a lot of camaraderie, and it's something that I encourage anybody, either in the millwork industry, the door pre-hanging industry, to join, because it'd be well worth your time to do so.
Yeah, and I'm curious. You said it's your peers who nominate
Mm-hmm.
you, including competitors.
Yes.
What does the competitive landscape look like? Is it cutthroat? Is it, hey, we're helping each other out because plenty of work for everybody? It's sort of different by industry. What's it like for you?
I would say it's. I don't know if it's necessarily cutthroat. I mean, there are some competitors, obviously, that I enjoy taking business from more than others. But for the most part, I would say the competition is a friendly competition. There's very little true animus in the industry.
Yeah. And, because it strikes me that one of the advantages of, being a member of the Alliance is sort of that peer-to-peer support. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
we've got this problem. Do you guys have that same problem? How are you guys handling
Mm-hmm.
it, kind of thing? Do you get that kind of support
All
in
the
there?
time, all the time. So, um, there's quite a bit of millwork that's imported from Asia and from South America. And tariffs and freight have always been a real problem. Even in the so-called good times, there's always been difficulties from production, from shipping, from you just name it. And so the ability to share names and contacts. Hey, listen, have you talked with this mill? They're maybe not as busy. Oh, have you talked with this broker? I've been able to get containers loaded on ships through him. You can actually get product coming out of XYZ port. So that type of information sharing has been absolutely vital, and that's part of the reason why I said a lot of the competition is friendly competition, because that type of information is shared.
Yeah, that's tremendous. What does the current tariff environment look like for you guys? Recording here,
Uh,
sort of end of March 2025.
yeah. So I'll tell you, the aluminum tariff is significant, and that one bothers me probably more than most, simply because the way the tariffs are written, it really strikes to aluminum. It does not define which form the aluminum is imported in. So, there's not a whole lot of aluminum smelting that takes place in the U.S. anymore. I saw something where I believe it's either 50 or 60% of all aluminum ingot in the U.S. is imported. Then you combine that with the aluminum extruders here in the domestic side of things already have an 80+% market share. So, what's the old saying? To a hammer, everything's a nail. So that one's a little tough. On the wood side of things, there's a lot of product that has historically been coming in out of Asia, really offset because the price of freight leaving the U.S. and going to Asia on those containers is almost nil. So you get a lot of product that is the result of lumber that's harvested here in the U.S., shipped to Asia, processed, and then brought back at a competitive advantage. So that side of things, the tariffs are probably warranted and needed. I kind of go back to the hardwood plywood tariffs that went into effect, excuse me, probably about 8 or so years ago on Chinese plywood. And the Chinese plywood is made of a genus that is very stable and very flat. And it's light, and it was really conducive to making case goods here in the U.S. So the domestic plywood industry filed a petition for tariffs to protect 300 jobs for Oregon hardwood plywood employees. But what they didn't do is close a loophole. So a lot of cabinet manufacturers started importing flat packed knockdown cabinets out of China, which were exempt from the duty. So they put tens of thousands of U.S. jobs at risk for 300. So, from my perspective with these tariffs, overall I support it for the American industry, but I would just wish that they were more tailored specifically than what they are. They're just a little too broad.
A little more strategic.
Correct.
Yeah. I'm going to shift gears now, David. Like to hear about a serious challenge that you've overcome in your life, whether that's something personal or professional. How'd you get through it, and what did you learn?
You know, if I have to think about it, I kind of remember, and you'll have to excuse me, I don't remember the actual date. It was right before COVID happened. And I remember sitting at my desk. This would have been January 2nd or something, right after when the year is beginning ready to start. And I'm cleaning out my desk. I'm throwing things away, trying to get it organized for the new year. And then I see where there were going to be additional tariffs that were placed on door styles that were made in China. And that was a big part of my business at the time. So we had several large domestic manufacturers of doors that we supplied these Chinese-made door styles. We had facilities that we didn't own, but we controlled in Lyon, Yungang, China, and elsewhere that we were importing that product in. So we had to act quickly. We had a molding facility in Clio, South Carolina, where we felt like we could import Brazilian LVL and make door styles there. So I was probably trying to ensure the production of about 30 containers a month of door styles from China into South Carolina with a whole different fiber. Excuse me. So there was an entire qualification process from our customers. Clock was ticking. Tariffs were going to happen in March or so. Then COVID hit. So if you can imagine, we're trying to move production from China to the U.S. with Brazilian fiber, with a qualification, with untested equipment, and all this during the time of COVID. No one could travel. And so for me, what I really learned out of that was the need for grit. I'd heard so many of my competitors and customers blame COVID. Oh, we can't do that. Oh, I can't get this. And everything was no, 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 can't. And it, in many ways, became almost a personal challenge to me because I couldn't accept no as an acceptable answer. I had customers I had to take care of. I had employees that I had to pay. I had my own family to take care of. And at the time, everyone also was panicking. Oh, housing is going to come to an end. And so do I have a job? Well, the actual opposite happened. That was one of the few industries that was actually able to function. So home building, remodeling, everything just exploded. So again, we're regrouping, inshoring production, new fiber, COVID, can't travel, untested equipment, and increased demand. And on top of that,
because there wasn't enough.
There wasn't enough, but I'm going to even go one step further. I had for one customer over 64 containers of door styles that we canceled. I was asked to call that customer because we were consigning the inventory, and we partially did not want to have that financial liability on the books, and we convinced them that they needed to cancel 64 containers, which they did, and they not only needed those 64 containers, they probably needed an additional 30. So that year was one of that was the toughest year professionally that I've ever had. But I think it taught me toughness. I think it taught me grit. I think it gave me that really never say die attitude with it. And on the flip side, though, whenever any of my vendors at a later point blamed COVID for 18-month lead times, as the aluminum extrusion industry was doing, I just had a hard time accepting that as an excuse.
They needed some of your grit.
Well, is what other alternatives are there? Are you really looking for additional ways, and just laying down and saying we can't do it? That was tough to accept.
Yeah. So when you were going through this struggle, who did you turn to for support?
My wife, she helped me greatly through all that. I mean, I've been really blessed with her. So we dated for a long time before we were married, and she knew the deal. I was always traveling, and she's absolutely the smartest person I know, and she's not only been my best friend, but confidant. So these kind of things I can share with her, and she can tell me when I'm being too tough, not tough enough, or so she's my consigliere.
I love that. What's her name?
Melissa.
Melissa. Give her a shout out.
Yeah.
I love that. What about the value of daily practices? You got any habits, rituals that you go through that help you start your day, keep on track?
So I'll tell you this. So having worked for a very successful publicly traded company, strategic planning, operational planning, I mean, all that was drilled into my head. And quite frankly, I think I became very good at that. But it is true, culture is important. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, as Zig Ziglar would say. So I make it a purpose every day to make sure that I'm taking 2 Gemba walks a day. I want to see what's going on the floor. I want to talk to every operator. I want to get to know them. I want to get to know their family. I want to know their story, because whenever employees have a sense of engagement, it really pays off, because one, there's a free flow of information. You really get to know what's truly happening on the floor, and and employees that are engaged, they care more. They're going to take a little bit more pride in what they're doing. And so I try to always make sure that culture, both in the office and on the shop floor, is held in the highest regard by everybody, because it is all important that we're all rowing the same direction on the boat.
You guys got a pretty decent sized company. I think a couple hundred employees or more.
We're about 275.
275. Mm-hmm. I mean, kind of hard for you to be the COO of all of this and all the responsibilities that takes, and then kind of be out there on the floor, like checking in with people every day. Like, how do you find the time for that?
You got to make time. So I live by the calendar. My phone and my iPad, as far as a schedule, is really important. But you make time for what's important.
And in building that culture, obviously you want to get the right people in there. What have you guys done when it comes to recruiting and retaining good folks that you've found success with?
So I think this, what I was talking about employee engagement is real. I don't want to call them previous ownership, because they're still here in the offices next door. But Jeff and Scott know a lot of these people, because Beaver Dam is a relatively small community. They went to high school with a bunch of them, so they know each other. They know each other's families. Now, that's not to say that we're insular in who we hire. That's not true. I would say that right now 35% or so of our workforce is immigrant right now, and so integrating the old time local people with the new workforce coming in presents this degree of challenges, but it's one that we've been able to navigate pretty well. This transition to an ESOP, I think, has been very, very powerful. So, we still offer, our regular bonus programs and, 401k, but now they're going to see this ESOP as far as the stock values. I mean, we're every day concentrate on paying down that debt, increasing shareholder value, and whenever the new stock releases happen in May, and when the new valuation of the stock is released in May, the employees are going to be very happy with what they see.
So how does it work, as much as you're allowed to explain? Like, is everybody sort of automatically a shareholder? Do they have to be there for a certain period of time?
Yeah, they have to be here for a year or so. They have to be here for a year, and then the shares are not fully vested until 5 years. Now, however, one thing that the family did is that all employees that had been here for 20 years, their shares were automatically fully vested. So it was something that they didn't have to do, which just shows the level of class and caring that the family has for their employees.
That's pretty powerful. David, what's a book or podcast or a course you've taken that really helpful in your development that might be helpful for folks in our audience to know about?
I would tell you that I am an avid fan of Sun Tzu's Art of War.
Say more about that.
So it's really, a tome on strategy. It's really a tome on really trying to pick your battles. And, for me personally, it really lays a foundation of personal interaction and in strategy. Simple things, especially, like, whenever you're at your weakest, be at your strongest. And, the real honor is winning without having to fight. It had such a profound impact on me that I used to go over to China quite a bit, and I would get questions like, "So, do you believe in reincarnation?" I'm like, no. Are you Buddhist? No. Well, we are, and we believe you were Chinese in a previous life. So,
because why?
Just I guess
the aura that you gave off from having absorbed that book, huh?
Yeah, no.
That's funny. What's future growth look like for you guys?
Well, first of all, the main priorities are paying off as much of the ESOP debt as we possibly can. And the way that things are structured for most ESOPs, it's hard to make any money the first couple of years with how you're paying off debt, but we're profitable in the first year, and we're well ahead of schedule in paying down debt. So I'm very proud of that. So for us, once we get some of this debt paid off, we're probably going to look at investments not only from an acquisitive side, but also from a technology side. Really can't divulge those right now, but there is definitely a plan of additional capabilities being added to the company.
Okay. Well, we'll have to have you back in a couple of years when you're allowed to talk about it and pull down the curtain there. If we were going to be celebrating something together about a year from now, what do you think that would be? What's something you're hoping to celebrate?
My son's graduation from college.
All right. Where does he go to school?
He goes at University of Southern Indiana. Indiana had a wonderful program for college credit, and he graduated high school basically as an incoming sophomore. So he's well on his way to getting that done. So very, very proud of the kid.
That's awesome. Let's see, where do we want to go now? Let's talk about maybe something that looked like a mistake earlier in your career. Sometimes we're just devastated by a bad idea, a bad decision, a mistake that we think we made. And as we get a little bit of distance from it, we look back and realize that was actually a really positive inflection point for us, because it spurred us to think a different way, to take a different action, to go in a new direction. You think of anything like that? Something like that pop into your mind?
I can't say anything that was necessarily a mistake. Believe me, I made tons of mistakes. I would say that especially early in my career, I've probably been a touch more aggressive than I should have been. But again, I've always been a very forward-charging type person. One thing that I hated at the time, but it was in hindsight such a great thing. So again, going back to the time at Quanex, they sent all senior leadership to go visit an industrial psychologist. and they did 360 reviews. And I, at the time, was absolutely livid about it because these were my people, and they were being treated rudely by this industrial psychologist out of downtown Chicago. And I had my customer service manager come up to me after she did her 360 interview, and she was just about in tears. Wow. And again, I was just livid. I mean, I was like, what are you doing to my people? I'm a big boy. I can take it. You can say whatever to me. I went in. So he did the 360 interview, and I had to go to Chicago for a in-person sit down with him after that. And I was coming in. I was loaded for bear. And, and I told him, I said, I really did not appreciate you handling and interviewing my employees the way you did. He said, I probably would have been upset with you if you hadn't felt that way. He said, but I have just felt over the course of my career that I have to do that to elicit the actual truthful response, because most people don't want to speak ill of other people. Okay. So, in hindsight, though, he gave me, some advice that really caused me to be self-reflective into myself. He taught me to be more self-aware of some nonverbal cues, about how that, I was a charismatic, bigger than life figure for both the good and the bad. So that, when I'm on, everybody's on. It ripples through the office. I'm having a bad day, or I give off a verbal clue or nonverbal clue that people took incorrectly. That had a negative impact throughout the entire facility. So it was, in hindsight, I was loaded for bear, but especially after that meeting, with some introspection, it was probably one of the best things that ever happened to my career. So I try to be very self-aware and cognizant of those interactions. And
so 360 review means that they're interviewing your coworkers. Yeah.
Yep. Basically, what does David do well? What does he do bad? What should he do better? This kind of thing. And so he just, and he did this to everybody. It wasn't just my people. It was the other executives within our company. And,
but he's a bit aggressive with them. He's trying to elicit emotional response because he believes in his experience, that's the way that you get truthful answers from people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yep.
But you learned a lot from that experience.
I did. He created
things about yourself.
Yeah, he created a dossier that even to this day, sometimes I will pull out and I'll thumb through, and just try to refresh myself with that. And I can tell, I just know that again, when I'm on, the office here, functions well, and everybody is superstars and rock stars. And if not that I'm rant and rave, I do not do that, but there are some days where I may not be as high energy, and that has a tendency of bleeding. So I have to be very, very careful of that. And and I appreciate the good doctor for bringing that to my attention.
There's a lot to be said for that level of personal introspection. It's not easy to sort of look within and say,
yeah,
well, I'm doing a pretty good job, I thought, but now I've got all these areas to work on. But what better way to keep growing and improving yourself?
Well, hey, listen, the numbers are important. They are. But in order to get the numbers, it takes a team, and the team has to be fully engaged. And if I have to make sure that I am doing a better job of coaching and motivating to get them feeling comfortable to do their job, I'm going to do that. And I hate when I interview people and they start speaking in cliches. So I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth here. One of the terms that just absolutely goes through me is servant leadership, because people really don't truly understand what that means. But for me, that it's more than a cliche, and it's something that I really take a lot of pride in. That creating teams that are bigger than the sum of their parts, and motivating and coaching, and creating that employee engagement, and other people respond to different stimuli, and so being aware and getting to know what motivates people, what they need, and when they need it. It's important, and I don't think that you can do that unless you are hearing more than you're talking.
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. David, I've just got one more question for you, but before I ask it, I want to do two things. First of all, I want to invite all the listeners to hit the follow button on their favorite podcast app. Continue to get more great interviews like we've had today with David Bryant from Young Manufacturing. I also want to let people know the best way to get in touch with either you directly, the company, or to follow your story. What would that be?
You could obviously look at our website, which is youngmanufacturing.com. We also have a microsite for our industry-leading rot-free frames at armalast.com. And obviously you can check out my LinkedIn page.
And we'll include all those links in the show notes for folks. So last question for you, David. As you look to the future, what are the changes coming to your industry that you're most excited about?
I do believe that these additional tariffs are going to create additional opportunities for American manufacturing. It just has to be done in the right way. I wish, as we discussed earlier, that the tariffs are more tailored than what they currently are. But the overall trend in the revitalization of American manufacturing, you're seeing more and more high school and college kids going after technical degrees and on-the-job training. And I just really believe that there is going to be a renaissance of American manufacturing that's going to last. The demographics line up for it. And I believe that anybody that really truly wants to roll up their sleeves and get to work can really find themselves a very good career in a whole host of industries here in the U.S. And that's really, really exciting when you think about it. I had always been concerned about the slow elimination of VOTEC in high schools. And you're seeing that to making a comeback. You're seeing kids pursuing trades. And these kids that are doing this, they're going to come out without any kind of college debt. And the future is extremely bright for them. And with the innovation that's happening with American manufacturing, with the additional technology that's being brought into manufacturing, I really do believe we're in the genesis of a golden age of American manufacturing.
Well, it's going to be fun to follow. David, I want to be the first one to thank you for sharing both your time
my pleasure.
and your story with us today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you very much.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.